This is The Water Table.
A chance to hear the agricultural side of these issues.
A place for people to go find information and education.
Water management is just going to become even more critical into the future.
How misunderstood what we do is.
I would encourage people to open their minds and listen to this dialogue.
Well, welcome back to the Water Table podcast. Today I wanted to talk a little bit with Levi Otis, Ellingson Companies. Levi is a guy that kind of knows what's going on in the world of politics and kind of local politics too up in North Dakota. There's some interesting developments over the last month and thought it'd be a fun podcast episode to talk about. So welcome, Levi.
Hey, Jamie, thanks for having me. Hope you had a good 4th of July and enjoyed the nice warm weather.
Oh yeah, it was wonderful. It was wonderful. He's just giving me a little crap since I was flat on my back with COVID most of the holiday weekend. But Levi, I wanted to visit with you about some of the developments the last, I'd say, 30 days or so in North Dakota. Some pretty prominent farm family, the Campbell family, sold some land. A pretty big chunk of land. I think it was a couple thousand acres, 2,500 acres of land. And, in and of itself, that's okay. A farm family sold some land, big deal. But then it came out that one group connected to Bill Gates was the new buyers of the land or the new owners of the land. And it created quite a stir in North Dakota, and that's just interesting to me, probably is the right word, is, we all know Bill Gates has been buying a lot of land the last 5, 6, 7 years and continues to do so. I don't think any of us know why, if it's an investment, what it is, but in North Dakota, they sure seem to think they know why, and it's created quite a stir. So let's talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It came out in Ag Week that Tri-Campbell Farms sold 19 or 2,100 acres of really nice, good farmland in northern end of the Red River Valley to Bill Gates. And I think the reason the writer from Ag Week, I believe, is who broke it, was interested is why do you have a prominent farm family selling that big of a chunk of land? And who are they selling it to, right? And if you know anything about Tri-Campbell Farms, they're not just farmers; they're bankers and they're real estate folks. And I think it just sent up some red flags, like what's going on. And the reporter, I think it was Mickle Pates actually, who dug into it and started following the line of, well, who is Red River Trust and how much land do they have, and traced that back to either Kansas or Nebraska. It's probably Omaha. I don't quite remember exactly. But then, sure enough, it is Bill Gates. And as you said, Jamie, North Dakota is a small town, so we kind of know everybody's business. And Bill Gates has been buying up a lot of land. It's interesting to me when you watch national coverage of Bill Gates or other billionaires buying land that North Dakota is kind of passed over because they don't understand that anti-corporate farming laws doesn't mean rich people can't buy land. There's just other ways of buying it rather than writing a check from Microsoft. And you probably know just as well as I and a lot of other people how you divvy up your wealth, right? And so you put it in trusts or triple LPs. And in North Dakota, we have anti-corporate farming laws, so you can't go write a check from Ellingson or a Prinsco and just buy land. So that definitely started a whirlwind of excitement through the state. And so now today we sit here and talk about it. And why do you sell land and why do you buy it, right?
Sure. And just for our listeners too, the land we're talking about, the subject property is like Levi said, in the northern Red River Valley. It'd be about as northwest of Grand Forks, North Dakota, 40 or 50 miles up where the Campbells. A lot of potato ground up there, a lot of potato farming, some very good ground and some very successful farming operations in that area. And but there's a lot of a conspiracy theory has never left alone in the state of North Dakota. They love conspiracies up there, and I find that I laugh about it. I find it interesting because you have Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, all three very different states, even politically. North Dakota and South Dakota are both much more conservative than Minnesota, but they are quite different from each other, even politically. And some of that comes, I think, with just that need for there to be a conspiracy theory in the state of North Dakota. And I think that's part of what's driving this whole conversation about Bill Gates buying land and all of the people having their own opinion on why. So talk a little bit about that and your experience with some of that in your state.
There's been a lot of stuff going on the last couple of years, and whether you like vaccines or don't, Bill Gates has definitely stuck his nose right into the middle of the coronavirus and the COVID vaccine. And he's never shied away from making comments about world population and carbon sequestration and manufactured meat, if that's the correct way to put it. So when you're farming down the street from somebody and all of a sudden they sell their land to somebody like Bill Gates, I try not to buy into the conspiracy theories too much, but I can definitely see why people get excited.
Sure.
If let's say potato ground's worth $8,000 an acre, now somebody comes and buys it for $6,100, might tick you off because you're willing to spend it. And then what are they going to do with that property, right? Are they just going to continue to rent it out like other wealthy investors, or are they going to try to put up some sort of a facility? Or what happens to the donations, right, to the local school or the church? And so people just easily get frustrated. And I think when you see somebody on TV every day pushing vaccines and pushing these different things to a group of people that certainly don't want them, that's how those things grow.
Yep. Hey, Levi, on the Water Table podcast now we have this is a video podcast now, and you just bumped your camera, so we'd like to see your face. I'm not sure if all of our listeners want to see your face, but I do. So thank you for that. So anyway, the other thing that I was wondering about when it comes to this with Bill Gates buying land in North Dakota, back in the 80s, when there was a farm crisis, they had a lot of foreclosures and forced foreclosures by the federal government at the time, in which there was a class action lawsuit in the state of North Dakota, and the farmers won in that lawsuit and were able to prove that the government was wrongfully foreclosing on them. And I think that I just bring that up because that is a culture and a mentality of North Dakota, is really keep we might say that is throughout the entire Midwest, but in North Dakota it really is. They want to protect the family farm. They want to protect small business, small farming operations, and allow them to survive and thrive if possible. And so I think when people see this kind of thing happening with a billionaire they don't know, they right away go to the worst possible case scenario rather than the guy's got billions and billions of dollars, and maybe he's just investing in farmland as one of the places where he wants to park some money.
No, you're absolutely right. So I don't fault Campbell's at all for making their decision to sell their land. If you know anything about Tri-Campbell Farms, once again, they're a very successful family. They are community oriented. They do have a brother that's in politics that tries to do the right thing, and I have no idea their reasoning other than when I look at them from the outside, they're all 60, late 50s, early 60s, and they've got three sons or nephews that are farming. And if you sell it all at one chunk and you could possibly get a rental agreement or a lease agreement for X amount of years, then you can do it, right? And so I don't really want to get into their business of why. I know that's been asked of me a lot is why would they do something like that, or why would they sell it? But at 60 years old, you got decisions to make. And another thing that we've talked about on this podcast before is U.S. Fish and Wildlife, or NRCS, and what our farmers deal with in North Dakota versus the rest of the country. Let's not forget, farmers were being paid to tile wetlands at the same time the federal government was up here putting them into easements, right? And so there is a little bit of a conspiracy. I tell people all the time, if we had social media back in the 50s, there wouldn't be a U.S. Fish and Wildlife easement signed up in North Dakota. But as we were down trying to build up the I states in the corn ground and draining wetlands because of malaria at the end of the Depression, I think that we're not that far removed, right? And so when you see more of this coming in, and we do have some archaic corporate farming laws in North Dakota that were ideally to keep the bad actors out. But I think now we're seeing it inhibit or prohibit other families getting together so they can keep their farms or hold off some of these outside interests. I guess it's just kind of interesting to me that it's all coming full circle. As you brought up the 80s, it's like, holy cow, it seems like we're facing it once again.
Right. Well, my hope is that I haven't talked to the Campbells. I don't know what they're up to either, but my hope is they're taking all that cash and reinvesting it in proper water management, because I know they've done a lot of it on their farms already. They believe in it, and it's what's helped them be successful year in and year out on their farming operation. So maybe a little bit sarcastic, but yeah, I'm hoping that's what they do with their newfound wealth from selling land there.
Well, if they don't, the new landlord will. We know how much he's putting pipe in the ground across the valley. This is not the first chunk of ground he's bought. This is not the first chunk of ground that is bought by somebody from Seattle. If you go and look across land ownership in North Dakota and you really start digging into some, I personally, I dig into land ownership of people that don't tile with us because I'm arrogant enough to get mad, that somebody didn't hire Ellingson to tile. And I look those things up and I look into trusts and, Bellevue, Washington, Redmond, Washington, Palo Alto, these trusts he's not the first and he's not the last. Land here is not very expensive compared to where it is in other places in the country. And if you can buy it at a decent price that you're happy with, that's the value of it. And then you can go and put in water management and you increase your value instantly. And then over the years, as you build up stronger soil. I don't think it's a bad investment. So sometimes I think we get a little carried away on the conspiracies, and we got to look at the full gamut of what we're facing in the future. And guess what? Land's never been a bad investment. I think USDA thinks we lose 2,000 acres a day of farmland. So they're not making any more. And in fact, we're making less, right? Yeah. So we're going to have to the smart guys are buying land and they're making it better.
Yeah. And I think that where I want to jump off with that comment is around, these uber wealthy investors from all over the country buying land, and one of the first things almost all of them are doing is improving that land by water management. And I think the reason why we're not seeing, and we are seeing a lot of farmers and a lot of retired farmers that are now landlords. I'm not saying that. We are seeing a lot of them do drainage too, and we've seen a lot of them manage their water on their farm. But the reason why we're not seeing the other farmers do it is because our politicians are not on board with this the way they need to be on board with it. They say they agree with it, but every time Mother Nature sneezes, the farmers get another check from the government around that. And I'm not being critical of anybody in that. What I'm saying is that there is a way to solve this issue And we've seen it over and over, in the Red River Valley being probably the best example of that is 2019. We have a snowstorm on October 1st, and I think there was 3 to 5 feet of snow in the Red River Valley, and there wasn't any sugar beets that came out of the ground if they weren't previously tiled, those acres. If they were tiled, they got those beets out of the ground, they got them harvested, but everybody got paid. And so what's the incentive to do that, to manage that water if you're going to get paid anyway? If you have a lot of money or just an investor, you're not getting paid. So you're going to want to do that. And I think it's a stark reality of what's going on. And I think, it's a job that I have, that you have, and that our colleagues in this industry have, is we have to be more vocal with our politicians about this, because it's the right thing to do. Our government and our taxpayers don't need to pay every time there's a problem when there's another solution. And I go so far as to say the taxpayers should pay, but they should pay to help those farmers manage the water on their land, so they don't have to pay them every time that there's a Mother Nature event. Let's pay for it once. Get done with it.
Well, you're absolutely right. Ask anybody who lived through the Depression, the few that are left, right? They say Americans are fat, right? And until they're hungry, they don't know. Yeah. And I mean, Undersecretary Robert Bonney was in Fargo last week, and he said everything except for the word drain tile, right? We need to produce more. The population's crazy. We don't know what's going on in Ukraine and Russia, right? So we're losing 20% of world food production and fuel. And we need to produce more, and we need stronger soil health. And I just wanted to raise my hand and say, drain tile, just say the word, right? Like, we've got so many millions of acres that we can tile. And we're not talking about wetlands. We're not talking about ground that doesn't need improvement. Strictly tile the low-hanging fruit. Let's just have that conversation first. And we're going to have to go to DC and have that conversation.
Yep, for sure. And, what do you think? What's your take? You're out in the field a lot, and you're talking to farmers and landlords and landowners every day. And like I said, there's a lot of people that are doing this. They're catching the vision, and they're saying, I'm going to improve my ground once. I'm going to improve it now, and it's going to pay me dividends for generations. But then there are the others that aren't. And what's holding those people back, do you think, from what's probably the number one reason why those that aren't managing the water on their farm are deciding not to do it?
Ease of the insurance, right? And it should be as easy for capital to gain capital as it is to fill out the work, do the work for the insurance, right? I can't tell you how many of my friends are like, how the heck am I going to afford $150,000? I've got, this loan, I've got this, blah, blah, blah. When, we're a bit biased, but because we know it works. If I could tell anybody my age, I would tile all my ground first, right? Some of our wealthiest customers have oldest equipment, but all their ground is tiled, right? And so I think if the access to capital was easy, right, and they weren't afraid of the water board, or they weren't afraid of the state, or they weren't afraid of the EPA, some of that would definitely help. But now it's just like, well, how about we just keep giving you insurance and making it easier to get insurance, and maybe they'll tile less. So it's government, right? Government is our problem. It's the same government that tells us we can't smoke, but then gives $100 million to the tobacco industry. Like, come on, right? So I just, that's kind of where it's at.
Yep. So what's also out there on your radar as kind of watching what's happening politically for our industry, just kind of speaking for our industry, and you're an advocate for, not only the company you work for, Ellingson, but for this industry and their competitors when it comes to ease of doing business and how we get more things in front of us that are good for our industry. What's on your radar right now? What's happening that you're working on?
Yeah, so we've had some issues in northwestern Minnesota. They've seemed to break away from the traditional Minnesota feelings of tile's good, and we can grow more with less, and not fully understanding what drain tile does or how lift stations work and or control structures like AgriDrain provides. So as well as I do, right? Biblical rains, pumps running, you're kind of peeing into a river. Some of those folks think we're causing the red to flood. So we're just going to have to do what we did here in North Dakota a couple years ago and go on tour and really try to educate some of those decision makers on water boards or watersheds. With all the stuff we've talked about today, just needing food. I know the hunger people are really ramping up the need to make sure we have enough food to feed everybody across the globe. So that has eased some of the regulation, I want to say, on agriculture. I just feel like the foot has come off the pedal a little bit because of the price of food at the store and the price of gas at the pump, which is, I guess, good for us to be able to continue what we do instead of feeling like we're fighting our own battle. One thing with Bill Gates and other billionaires that own major companies that have carbon goals or carbon sequestration programs, or if you want to talk about a conspiracy theory, that might be one. If you own 250,000 acres or 400,000, I think is a Bezos rumor, it'd be very easy to flip the switch and say, we're going no-till on all my farms, because all you got to do is pay more for rent and you'll get a no-till farmer. That's not rocket science. And now you'll have built-in credits. And then...
Just stop there a minute. You're talking about carbon credits when you say built-in credits.
Yep, carbon credits.
Yep.
So, and all these companies going in that direction, they're going in that direction because the consumer is forcing it, right? The consumer at Walmart will pay $1 more to pick up a box that says this is sustainably grown or carbon neutral or whatever the tagline is. And some of it is, it's snake oil, right? Well, if you're in control of the land and how it's growing and you became a 100 billionaire for a reason, you're going to be really quick to figure out how to make that work in your facility, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's Walmart. So those are going to be interesting things to watch in the next couple of years, because I don't think they're going to wait around for agriculture in general to get on board. I think they're just going to do it. And the people growing the food are going to say, what did they do?
Yeah. And here's what I'd say about that is, I don't know. I don't know enough about carbon sequestration and how big of a problem it is. I'm not going to try to speak to that. But what I will say is there is an opportunity because of how you just explained that companies want to be able to prove that they are doing the right thing when it comes to carbon. And so if there's opportunities to not disc your field or to no-till, to plant cover crops, and you can get paid for that as a producer, you got to think about that, because there's going to be a lot of that coming. And at what point is going to be your best advantage? Is that right now as it's an emerging market, or is that after it gets developed a little bit? I don't know. I'm sure a bunch of our producers know way more than I do about that. But there is going to be an opportunity, and it's going to be somewhere between opportunity and a really big opportunity. I'm not sure, and I think that has to develop out. I don't know if anybody really knows that yet, but you're seeing, almost more than once a month now, new people entering this market, whether it was Land O'Lakes, who did it, quite a while ago, to, just recently now, Hormel has announced they are in the carbon credit market with Target, and And so we're just going to see more and more of it, which is going to be more and more opportunities for farmers to pick and choose kind of who they want to join up with.
That's absolutely right. And that's why I truly believe part of this play, and rich people have always bought land, right, since the beginning of time. So that's not really surprising. But they are going to put themselves in a position to capitalize on their own credits that they need for companies that, you know, they're chairing, and to make those credits or to receive those credits, however they play out. Academia is a really interesting place to have these conversations, because you could put 4 PhDs in a room and 4 of them are going to have different views on how it's scored, how you score the carbon sequestration. And all I know is you can't do any of it without soil health, great soil health. So tile your ground, start there.
Yeah. And we're going to continue to talk about stuff like that on the water table, and about, you know, a big carbon producer is concrete. The manufacturing of concrete is 7% of the world's carbon emissions, of the whole world's carbon emissions. So you look at that, what we do in our industry with plastic pipe and with producing plastic pipe out of recycled material is just a huge savings to the environment and to carbon. And you know, we're seeing there's going to always be products that need to be made out of virgin plastics. So when those virgin plastics are met their useful life and they get ground up and reused, there isn't a better place for that product to go than into pipe, which goes into a field drainage application for farmers, which grows corn and soybeans, which feeds the world. So it's the best story you can get. There's other stories that are rank at the same level, but it doesn't get better than that from the standpoint of what we can do to save our environment. Whether you want to do that or not, why wouldn't you? Because you can do this with the highest quality product. You can make just as good of a product, and in some cases you can even control it better. And we're going to talk more about that on the water table. We have in the past, and we'll continue to pound that story. So thanks for joining us today, Levi. I'm going to get you back again. It's fun to have you on, because I know you can connect the dots for a lot of our listeners, so appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and we'll just keep plugging away. And if anybody wants to reach out, it's lotis@ellingsoncompanies.com, lotis@ellingsoncompanies.com. You can email me and tell me I'm nuts or I'm way off the mark, but the dialogue is something we haven't had in this industry for a long time, and it seems like the last 10, 15 years or so really picked up. And Water Table Podcast is a great spot, and Twitter is a great spot to keep sharing the message. So if we can be of any help to anybody else, give us a call and we'll be there.
Yeah, I know you're going to be, real quick before we go, you're going to be at some stuff here later this summer. The Midwest Council on Agriculture is having a meeting in Detroit Lakes in I think August 22, and then you're going to be down at Farm Progress Show. I think, is that in Boone, Iowa this year? And then after that, there's I think right around the 1st of September is the International Drainage Symposium, which you'll be representing the industry. So for those of you listening,
Big Iron up in North Dakota. Thanks. You just erased my summer. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, you haven't done anything the first half of the summer, so you can work hard the second half. So anyway, yeah. Thanks for your time, Levi. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Yeah. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us today on the Water Table. You can find us at watertable.ag. Find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. And you can also find the podcast on any of your favorite podcast platforms.